think
Speaking about a
now,
list that's way too long, we're gonna get into top 10 Star Trek movies.
do you want to do it like top 10? Do you want to do like the same thing we're doing, or you just want to list off your top five and no punting or whatever?
Can I be
Or do you want?
honest? I'm having a lot of fun doing like we're doing. So I
I'm
say
good either way, man.
let's do it like top 10. You know.
Got it.
So yeah. So Sandy, what is your 10 to 8?
Okay, so my 10 to 8 are okay. I'll just go into my number 10. Is a great movie that I think doesn't get a lot of love for it because it's got a lot of character development. It's got a lot of story development. It doesn't have, it does have a lot of good action in it, but a lot of people don't see that over the emotional stuff in it, and that is Star Trek Insurrection.
That
And I
is
know
a
it's a
punt.
punt.
That is a big punt.
Yep, no, I know.
Okay, so what's your number 9?
All right, my number 9 is the movie right after this movie, which I think is great. It's one of the best action movies that's out there. It's got great action movies, but it's also one of the best Picard movies that we have, and it stars a great actor, just really starting out at this point, Tom Hardy as Shinzon, and it is Star Trek Nemesis.
Not on my list, sadly.
Not on your
so
list,
let's
no
talk
problem.
About it.
All right, so this is the final entry in the Next Generation cruise movie journey. What I liked about this movie is that it did give everybody a chance to shine a little bit in this movie, including Deanna, who doesn't usually have a lot to do in the movies, but she was very, pivotal in this movie. I know a lot of people didn't like that particular story portion of that, but I liked how we weren't gonna, if there was another movie going forward, which of course there wasn't, we wouldn't have seen Deanna or Riker because they were moving on to their own ship, and to do that. And a lot of what happens in this movie is directly related to that fact that that's where they're going at the end.
It was billed as the final Star Trek Next Generation movie. It was entirely intended to be the last one. That's why the poster, the tagline in the movie is like the final adventure.
Exactly.
That's the thing about that movie, which I'm going to be perfectly honest, while you were talking, I changed my list. I took off one of the movies and I put Nemesis at number 10 because honestly, when I do think about it, I think my biggest issue with the movie is for the final Next Generation movie, I don't mind it ending sad. I don't mind that. What I didn't like is the fact that I didn't feel like every character really got their due. I felt like some characters, like Troy and Riker, kind of just had storylines created just to give them stuff to do in the climax, because without them, Beverly Crusher, really nothing to do in this movie. It was a very Picard Data movie, which I'm fine with, except when you get to the end of the day, it's the last Next Gen movie, and again, comparing it to All Good Things, where pretty much all the characters had great stuff to deal with, that's my one issue. But honestly, you talking about it, I realized I do like it more than another movie that I did have on my list. So yeah.
And it's absolutely one of those movies that took a really cool idea and went with it. Like, you've got a clone of Captain Picard that nobody knows about that got shoved onto the Riemann home planet when their plans didn't work out to die. Him rising to power and creating the most devastating ship known to humankind. And just that, once again, that ability to sacrifice, which they do at the end in two ways. Data sacrificing himself to save Picard, and Picard sacrificing the Enterprise to stop stop Shinzon's scimitar. And, so once again, Data, losing his life at the end is tragic, but it's Data's character. It's been his character. It makes sense.
And that's the one thing, again, in the same way we talked about Picard being the way he is in the movies, makes sense That makes sense. It doesn't seem out of character for Data to do that. It would seem out of character for Data to not do that. And also, again, I'm really glad that this is on your list, because I'm glad that I'm talking about a movie that I do like more than another movie that I have on my list, because that end scene with Picard and Data's brother, where they just are singing.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, it's just like, there's a weird everything's gonna be okay at the end of this. Like, Picard and Riker's last scene, like, there's this thing of like, all right, we're all moving on to a new chapter in our lives, but everything's gonna be okay. I also like the deleted universe scene where Wesley is back in Starfleet and his girlfriend from the game, Robin. Because I'm sorry, that relationship in that one
Ashley
episode I loved that episode so much because
it's a great episode.
And it was so great in that deleted scene to be like, oh my god, they do wind up together. Thank God. Oh, I'm so happy.
It's so good, and because if we're going back, and like when I made my list, I made two separate lists. I made my favorite next gen cast, and I made my favorite original series cast. Wesley's actually is number 5 on my list, because I love that character. I thought he was great, and I thought what they did with him by the end was kind of it was like, okay, so he's got some kind of superpower or some kind of this, and he's like, he drops out of Starfleet. That's not the Wesley I know.
Didn't know. That's why I did like a Nemesis, where even though it's like quick, you're like, oh, he's back in Starfleet, and again, so
exactly. So
great choice. So what's your number 8 pick?
My number 8. We talked about this earlier before we were on. But my number 8 is Star Trek Beyond
That's my number 9.
Is that your number 9? Okay, perfect.
So we've talked about that, because my number 10 is Nemesis and my number 9 is Beyond. So
we punted my number 10, so we'll talk about that when we get to yours. All right, so out of all the J.J. Abrams movies, this is my second favorite. My first favorite's a little higher up on the list.
Same.
But this movie for me started off kind of weak, but really did pick up by the end, and it showed that Chris Pine's Kirk, at the beginning of this movie, he's kind of disillusioned with Starfleet. He's kind of bored almost, just traveling around, being a scientist. It really shows that like antsiness of him. He's like, I'm just kind of tired of this. I kind of just want to leave and just go and live my life and stuff like that. I don't want this to be everything that I am and do. But once you get past that part and there's something, to focus him and to do a challenge for him, he really steps up. But I think that this movie is really a good cast movie, because everybody of the main crew has an arc in it. Bones and Spock are stuck together. Chekhov and the captain are stuck together. Then you meet the new person that helps them out there, played by Sophia Boutella. She's fantastic. I just can't remember her name at the moment.
I've seen this movie once, so
Idris Elba is very great
really
in this movie. He's a great villain in this movie with real consequences. And once again, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, but once again we got another destroyed Enterprise. They seem to do that a lot.
They really, J.J. Abrams really has a thing for destroying the Enterprise. Really does. It's almost like he's trying to say something about the old Star Trek.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen the destruction of the original Enterprise in the original series.
We'll get to. Hopefully, you have the movie when they do it the first time. Mm-hmm. The difference between how I feel when they did it in the first time they did it in a movie to these times is I just don't care. It's just an event.
See, this, I'll agree with you on this one. For Beyond, the destruction of the Enterprise really didn't mean that much to me. Mm-hmm. But in Generations, when the Enterprise D goes down,
that one, I was more talking about like when they did it in Into Darkness and then Beyond. It's like I just don't care. It's kind of like you're just doing it for the shot. You're just doing it because it looks cool to see the giant Enterprise fall, and it's like
it's visual.
Search for Spock and Generations. They had made the ship a character, and so you care.
That's right.
When you do it, I'm sorry to jump ahead head, but the line when they're watching it in Search for Spock
What have I
blowing
done?
up is, Bones, what have I done? What you
What
always
you
do.
always do.
Turn death into a fighting
chance to
That's
live.
I'm sorry.
So
Beyond
good.
is okay. I've seen it once. Haven't really had a hankering to revisit it. It's okay, but it's not really.
If you like that movie just for like, because as far as I'm concerned, it's probably out of the newer, the rebooted episodes. I think that this has got the most action in it. I think I think it's more. It's less a Star Trek movie than it is an action Star Trek movie. So it doesn't have a lot of that character development. It doesn't have a lot of that story development. Even so far as Into Darkness, which isn't on my list at all, but Into Darkness had a lot of character development in it. So it was a little bit better that way. But if you like pure action and pure, fun, just go watch this one again. Like I said, Idris Elba alone is worth it.
It's good. It is. It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your 10 to 8. Okay, so
that's
my
number
10 was Nemesis. My number 9 was Beyond. My number 8 is the motion picture.
Oh wow! Okay.
Is that a pun?
Not on my list, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I love this movie. Everyone I know, that's the boring one. That's the one when it's boring. I'm like, no, that's the one where it's an episode of Star Trek where they're talking and not fighting. Sorry that you wanted Star Wars. Like, I honestly, at this point, I've heard so much crap be thrown at this movie, I honestly don't know what to say anymore. Like, yeah, I'm sorry. That's a movie. Yeah, it's long. Yeah, it's trying to be 2001-ish, but, like, it's a movie that has really interesting discussions. And when you get to the end of the film, to spoil it, when you find out V'ger is actually Voyager, and the reason why it was doing what it was doing was it just wanted to know its place in this world. Which the entire movie is about that. Spock doesn't know what his place is. He doesn't want to go full Vulcan, but he's not sure if he wants to return to Starfleet. Kirk is an admiral, but he doesn't know if that's actually what he wants to be. Does he actually want to be a captain? Deckard wants to be a captain, but he also wants to be with Aaliyah. Like, it's fantastic. And it all culminates in, that's exactly what the villain of the movie is trying to figure out. And yeah, it's slow-paced, and it's a little funky because it's the 70s, but it is a great Star Trek movie. It also introduced us to the Jerry Goldsmith score, which I think we're all happy to have. So yeah, I love this movie, problems and all.
I really enjoy this movie. I truly do. And like, seriously, it goes to say that, it's not on my list, not because it doesn't deserve to be on my list. It's just not on my list because there's so many more that I love more that I'll watch more. Is it long? Yeah, it's long. Does it matter? No. It tells a story. And as long as you can tell the story within what you're trying to do, then that's all that matters. To see that destructive, to see that opening sequence with, once again, my favorites, the Klingons, going in there and being like, gotta get him, kill him. And and they go in there and they're beaten so soundly and so fast that it's it's remarkable to see. You're like, what the heck is this?
I mean, to open the movie like that,
I know,
like,
right?
Oh my God, what is this?
And then you see Kirk come back and then get on to, and basically force himself on, to get back into captain. I think that we can pretty much guarantee at that point that he doesn't want to be an admiral anymore. It was the worst mistake of his life. I think Bones even makes that comment.
Says.
Yeah, it's the worst mistake of your life. You belong out here with the unknown. It's where you're best at, and you see the kind of the dick move where he goes in there and he's like, hey, yeah, listen, I know I groomed you, Captain Decker, but you're out of here. And then not only did he make him science officer, but then he went out and Spock comes back. So then he's like gone again. He's like out of there. But I loved that relationship between Commander Decker and Lieutenant Ilea, the Deltan, who comes on there. I've never seen a more attractive woman bald in my entire life before. So to have that relationship and then to have the story development, Spock's story. I mean, we find him on Vulcan and he's almost full, of Kolinar. He's almost purged all emotion. Then he hears the call of this thing out in space, and he has to go out and find it. So he goes back to the Enterprise, and because of all the stuff he'd been doing on Vulcan, he sort of had to relearn how to be friends with everybody again instead of just.
It's certainly, it's again, like I said, I think it's a great movie. I think we should just move on. What is your number 7 to 5?
All right, so this might actually be a punt, but I'm going to say it anyway. My 7 is The Search for Spock.
That is my number 7.
Nice. All right, so we can talk about Search for Spock.
Yeah, let's talk about the.
So let's talk about The Search for Spock. Great movie. So we end pretty much exactly where we left off in Wrath of Khan, which we will definitely get to later. Yes. So we end off, Spock is gone. He is, he's not on the Enterprise anymore. Well, we're going to talk about it anyway. So he perished at the end of Wrath of Khan, and they shot him out in a photon tube on the Genesis planet. He landed there, and the Genesis planet.
Photon tube, actually.
Nice.
Went to the Star Trek experience in Las Vegas, and that was one of the props they had. It was. I have some stories I can tell, but that was a fun day being there.
And so we find out very quickly that
the Genesis planet, because of how it is bringing Spock back to life, and the whole movie now becomes a battle between Kirk and company trying to go and get Spock back. David and Saavik trying to make sure Spock is alive, and then the Klingons trying to get the Genesis device. And all these storylines converge at an amazing climax.
Now, and remember, the only people that know that Spock might be alive is the crew of the Grissom with David and Saavik are on. They find a life form, and they shouldn't be a life form, and they go down and do it. The crew of the Enterprise, who's practically being retired at this point, and the Enterprise is being mothballed, that Sarek, Spock's father, comes to him and says, why didn't you come to Vulcan like you were told? And Kirk's like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What are you talking about? And so they do a mind meld, and Sarek is like, well, he didn't
McCoy.
Do it.
It's
because
McCoy,
it's McCoy.
The Force, Kelly, just gets
so
to play the
movie.
Scene in the bar with the security guard when he's trying to Vulcan neck pitch him.
What are you doing? Yeah, it's like, come along quietly, Doctor. It's so good, and so the crew, hatches this plan because they've got to go and get Spock's body so they can put his Katra back into the body so then that they could proper burial on Vulcan. Only when they get there do they realize that
He's
Spock
alive.
may be alive.
You're right, yeah. And that's the thing. It juggles these storylines, but it all feels natural, and it really, I'm sorry, that scene when David dies is so well done. There's no music to it. It's very, and he also, again, he's the son of Kirk. He's a heroic character. He doesn't die. He dies saving Spock and Saavik because they're going to kill Saavik.
He's going to kill Saavik, so he jumps up to fight the guy, and that's how he dies.
That we only met in one movie. They just did such a good job of having him have a heroic end, and then also Kirk's
reaction.
You Klingon bastard! And you feel because he just got this relationship with David back.
Yep,
and he's
because he didn't
explore it.
And because he didn't know. He didn't even know he had a kid. And of course, we find out more about that in Star Trek 2.
For Star Trek 2, he knows he has a kid.
That's right.
That his mom didn't want David to be with his dad. She took him.
That's
Kirk
right.
knew he had David.
Yeah, because he says that. He's like, is that David? Yeah, so you're right. Absolutely, he knew. But let's not forget, one of the best parts about this movie, once again, Klingons. And this particular Christopher Lloyd as Commander Kurg, so good and so vicious too. So when he's on there he's like, one down, What's your choice, Captain? He has like zero emotion with the fact that he just killed Kirk's son. None at all. And he's just like, and then Kirk just gets vicious. And that's when we get to,
and let's also say this. Kirk being able to go back to old school Kirk one more time in this movie and just fight Kirk on the Genesis planet as it's falling apart.
Breaking apart.
And just kicking him. Oh my God, it's fantastic.
I have had enough of you. Right it's down into the lava.
Great.
So good.
And then, of course, the ending of this movie is just, your name is Jim. It's so
good. It leaves you with that happy feeling. You're like, okay, the universe. Yeah. If you were just to take it and go, motion picture, Wrath of Khan, and Star Trek: The Search for Spock, that's a great trilogy. Yeah, it's a great trilogy. And then you could split up the rest of them any way you wanted to, but that's a great trilogy, and you leave that movie going, all right, they're all back together again. Good. Everything's okay. Whew, all right, brutal. Yeah. Okay, they'll get a new ship. They'll just build a new one. It's okay.
Yeah, we'll figure out that in the fourth one, which we'll talk about.
We'll great. Get to at some point. Yeah. So that was my number 7. My number 6 is Star Trek Generations.
That is not on my list, even though it probably should be, but that's in the V.
No worries. Star Trek Generations for me was the perfect melding of the passing of the torch. It starts off on the Enterprise B's inaugural journey, and we had the dignitaries of Chekhov and Scotty and Kirk being on there. There's a bunch of camera crews all over the place, and then we see a distress signal come up, and it's and the captain is really new and doesn't know what know what to do. So who jumps in? He's like Kirk. Kirk jumps in and he starts taking over and barking orders and sends Scotty to engineering. We need this, and he gets all this help, and then the tragic event.
The thing I like is he doesn't at first. At first, he's going to let the captain deal with it, and he's going to take the chair, and then it's, no, let me do this.
Well, yeah, and then because for a couple of times, the captain looks at him, and he's like, no, don't do that. And he's like, yeah, no, do that. And so he realizes, he's like, Captain Kirk, I would be, very, very pleased or happy for any help that you could give me. And so he just jumps right in. He's like, okay, we need to do this. We need to get this. Saving these people is a priority. And he just knows what to do. And he's Captain Kirk. He's the captain of ship again, named the Enterprise. And what does he do? He does exactly what Kirk always does and what he always said. And it happened multiple times in the original movies. Without Spock and McCoy by his side, he was alone. He didn't have his partner. So when he went down to try to get that deflector back up so they could save those people, he makes the ultimate sacrifice. And what we believe is he dies. And fast forward 70 years, and we see awesome crew of the Enterprise on a boat, not a ship, but a boat in the middle of the ocean. And
then this begins the part of this movie that I'm not a fan of. The part of this movie I like is the Kirk Picard stuff. I think that is great. The part of the movie I don't like is which again, I know people are going to be like, for the guy who talked about how great motion picture was, this was just whereas motion picture is a long, boring episode of Star Trek that I find interesting, Generations, most of the movie is a long, boring episode of Star Trek that I don't really care about.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to poo-poo on it because I know you really see it, but it's just for a Passing the Torch movie, I wanted more than the last scene to be. I wanted it to be like the episodes of Star Trek when Spock and Scotty were back on. I wanted that with Kirk and Picard. I wanted more of the movie for them. I would have loved if Kirk was on the Enterprise D and seeing it and just... there's a different movie with the same plot that I would have liked more. It's good.
Yeah, and I can definitely respect that. I really did enjoy the few interactions that we did have between Kirk and Picard. I love the horse riding scene. I think that's great.
Mr. Spock, he probably would say that this is illogical.
That's right.
Such a great, yeah.
It's so good. And I mean, his last lines, when he does it, this was fun, and oh my. And then he goes, and then he gets buried on the top of that mountain by Kirk, which then leads us into a whole nother book series where the Borg actually come and get his body and reanimate him to be the enemy of the humankind. It's a great series. You should pick it up if you go and see it. But yeah, for a movie itself, I liked it. Once again, we see the destruction of the Enterprise.
And it's a great scene.
It's such a good scene because
that bear, not the bear.
I mean, it's like once again Klingons, right? You get Lursa and B'Etor from the original series, and they're there. It's so good.
This is also the last time, sadly, we ever get to see Guion.
That's right.
We never get to see, which makes sense because the Enterprise D was designed to be a vessel for non-Starfleet to be on. Whereas the Enterprise E was just a Starfleet vessel because they went into more warring times post this movie because of a lot of the events of this movie. Because
of not just the events, but the events of Deep Space Nine. They were at war with the Cardassians and the Dominions.
It changed this. Yeah, it was definitely, again, we said it before, the destruction of the Enterprise in this movie works because, one, it's a great scene, and two, they also just... that Enterprise D had built a character, and you understood, and the fact that it wasn't all Starfleet, it was innocent civilians' lives were also in danger. It was great.
Absolutely. But yeah, so that was number 6 on my list, and so my number 5. Mm-hmm. My number 5 is Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home.
That's a punt.
Is it a punt?
That's a punt. All right, so my number 7, of course, was Search for Spock. My number 6 is Star Trek Insurrection.
Okay, perfect.
So here's the thing. This is the things that I hear about this movie. It's just a 2-parter Star Trek Next Generation episode. Jesus, have you watched any 2-parter Next Gen? They're awesome. And this episode, if you want to call it that, is awesome. Because the entire plot is the captain who was always about the Prime Directive going against it, performing an insurrection. It all comes down to that scene when he's talking to the Admiral, and the Admiral's like, but it's only 500 lives. How many more does it take before it becomes wrong?
Exactly.
And it's action-packed. I have so much fun watching this movie. The end bit of this movie, when he's fighting he's fighting the Sona.
The Sona.
And he's climbing up, and it's just like, you wouldn't risk rupturing this, would you? And he just puts the face in it, and he's like, because I would.
I would.
Oh, yeah. It's so good.
And then Riker with he's like,
Riker maneuver.
You're gonna be too late, and and he's like, they fly right through that that thing, and they just beam him up, and F. Murray Abraham is like, I love
Insurrection because it's such an interesting thing of these characters who were so by the book, realizing that the book is being used to let bad stuff happen.
That's right.
The Admiral and the Sonar are using the Prime Directive and all this stuff to be like, well, we're moving these people to help, and it's like, no, you're using this to help yourself, not others. We're going to perform an insurrection to help other people. Exactly. This was also the introduction of my second favorite Star Trek. The Enterprise from Motion Picture is my favorite Enterprise. The Enterprise E is my second favorite, so that's also cool. This... Oh, wait, no. What am I saying? Stupid me. Thinking First Contact. That's when we first shoot the Enterprise E. My bad. But
it's all right. The Enterprise E is my favorite Enterprise. The Sovereign class vessel is so fantastic.
I have been looking at that. I've been looking at that. I think it's Entertainment Earth. The really well designed one. I'm looking at It's a little pricey.
So pricey. So pricey. So that was your number.
So yeah, that was my number 6. So my number 5 is probably a punt for you. It's Star Trek 09.
It is a punt for me, yeah.
Okay, so let's go into your 4 to 2 then.
Okay, so my number 4 is another. It's another movie directed by Nicholas Meyer. It's not the one that most people talk about, but it's for me.
This is my number 4.
Is it your number
It's
4?
Undiscovered Country.
It is Undiscovered Country. Star Trek 6. I love this movie because not only does it have a lot of action, but it also has a lot of story to it as well. It has a great prison scene. It has a great courtroom scene. It has a great, it has a great heist scene, almost
great
like a
action scene.
Great action scenes. I mean, Hikaru Sulu is now the captain. He's got his own ship, the Excelsior, which is is so good. And it's just such a great cast movie that I don't even like.
I'm sorry to take this from here, but in the way I talked about Nemesis not really working for me as the final next-gen movie, this one worked as the final original series movie. Everyone felt like they got that. Everyone has that moment. Scotty gets to shoot, he gets to phaser the Klingon that's about to kill the president. They all have moments, and I love how it's the stuff on the prison planet with McCoy and Kirk is so much fun.
So good, so funny.
And we get, more back and forth banter between McCoy and Spock in this movie, and it's so much fun. And then, the end scene is there's no other way for the original series cast to go out than just, if I were human, I believe my response would be, go to hell.
Exactly.
Of course, second stars are right.
And no, we can't. We cannot forget the amazing performance of Christopher Plummer as the Klingon commander,
or not
to be.
That's just a question, Captain.
And and
he's so good.
He's so maniacal, and he's firing while he's cloaked, which shouldn't be possible, but it is. And Sulu and Kirk have to come up with these. It's so amazing.
Oh yeah, and that just working on the torpedo right before it goes into the bay is so great. And
him and Spock, McCoy and Spock working on that torpedo.
And the whole idea of, this movie was, again, Gene Roddenberry was always so smart about dealing with stuff that was topical. Was this movie is talking about communism and Russia, and they will die. Let them die.
Yeah.
It's so it's fantastic. I love this movie so much. This was the first Star Trek movie I owned, and so this was the one that I watched over and over again. I love this movie. And
I love it because of the message. Kirk starts out with that message with, let them die, because he's so angry about what they did to his son. But by the end, that hatred of the Klingons has evaporated, and he realizes that he's painting them all with one wide brush, but there are some that share his ideals as well, and they want to bring peace to the galaxy.
And they're also willing, because they know the situation they're in, they're willing to work with the Federation. They're willing to join the Federation. They don't want to be at war. They've seen that their planet is dead, and this is what they need to do. And they're not saying, hey, let's forget about the war, the war we had for all these years, but let's try to move on. Let's try to be better. And I love it. So what's your number 3 then?
Number 3 for me is Star Trek 09.
Okay, the reboot. And that was my number 5.
Yep. So I love this movie because as much as JJ gets shit for making movies that are similar, and this movie's got some similar aspects too, because you're dealing with the same characters, but he put a really different spin on it and was able to, change history without it being stupid.
Yeah.
And, having, Nero come through and the old Spock, having the connective tissue with Leonard Nimoy being part of the cast and knowing this other cast and getting used to them. There are some really funny moments in this movie. Like JJ is really good at humor, especially in like when McCoy smuggles him on board the Enterprise and he injects him and he blows up and his hands are all huge honking and his tongue can't speak. It's very, very, in a very stressful moment, it's levity like that doesn't seem. Oh yeah, your tongue feel, and he's like, it's so funny, but not stupid funny. You know what I like? Smart funny.
Yeah.
And so I like this movie because it really showed that there was a potential to do a reboot properly and give yourself another, like, if this was the timeline and then you just did this and you went that way.
It was different enough that it didn't feel like they were treading on ground while being similar enough that the potential was there. Such that what they did after that kind of shot that potential out the freaking door. But for what it's worth, I really, again, it's in my top 5. I really do enjoy this movie.
Exactly. And for me, it's all about that opening, that not just the opening sequence, but then the next sequence, with Kid Kirk, driving the Corvette, and running from the cops and listening to Sabotage from the Beastie Boys and dropping that Corvette over the cliff and getting in crap.
This
and then,
was also the bar where
fight.
Everyone thought they were smart because they were like, oh, well, now we know what the T stands for. It's like, did you not see the animated series? Did you not see Star Trek 6? We've known his middle name is Tiberius for a number of years now, but it's cool. It's okay. It's nice that you think you know because they said it in this movie. Again, I'm not trying to be a dick Star Trek fan, but it just made me laugh that so many people were like, "Hey Matt, do you know what the T stands for?" And it's like Tiberius, and people would be like, "You fucking nerd," and then it's like this movie comes out and was like, "Yeah, his name is Tiberius." I'm like. What the hell?
Yeah, welcome to the club, guys.
I was a nerd until J.J. Abrams made a successful movie, and now knowing that, apparently, you're not a nerd.
Exactly. But I mean, that's why '09 is so high up on my list, because I thought that they did a very good job of rebooting the franchise and giving it enough of a different direction that they could go in different places, which is why I was so disappointed with
Into Darkness,
because you had the opportunity to do something so new and give us a different version, and you went with something so old and not even done. And
not even done as well. Like, I'm sorry, just not even done as well. It was just done. So...
Like, not even close. Like Wrath of Khan was Star Trek, Into Darkness, but better, like way better, like 100% better.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. So my number 3 is a pun from earlier. It's Voyage Home.
Okay, perfect.
This is such a different Star Trek movie because it's not dealing with space travel. It's really dealing with, they're trying to save whales, okay, but it's such a simple plot that allows the characters, and mostly Kirk and Spock, their whole interaction, because the whole thing is Spock is not quite his old self, he still is calling, Kirk Admiral, and he's like, Spock, you can call me Jim. And it's so interesting, and Kirk's relationship with the Doctor in this movie, I think, is one of the best relationships Kirk has. It feels so genuine, so real, and it's funny. It is not action-packed, but it's adventurous. Like, that scene when they're trying to get the whales onto the ship, and the boat's hunting them, and it's such a great movie. I have such a fun time watching this. I think that's why it's number 3 for me. It's one of the most rewatchable Star Trek movies for me. It's one I can throw on anytime.
Absolutely. Hands down. I always call this one the funny serious Star Trek movie because it's so humorous.
That's what it is.
It's so humorous, but it's got a real serious message on there. It's like, guess what, guys? 500 years in the future, if you guys don't stop doing this, I'm going to have to come back in time and fix shit because you guys screwed it up. So don't do that. But it's so funny.
Hey, thank God we haven't seen that at all.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank God after this movie, we all just became really environmental. And it's not like my generation has to fix the sins of the past. Yeah. Not at all. Not to get political here, but thanks a lot, old people.
Rocking. And I mean, like, so many good scenes in this movie, like the hospital scene, the Chekhov scene,
I'm sorry, no, best scene in this movie. Hello, computer.
Hello, computer.
Hello, computer.
Computer.
And then he puts
it's like,
in the
just
thing,
use the keyboard.
Like,
how
what
quaint.
What are you doing? How do you know he isn't the one that discovers it?
Yeah. It's so good, and I love, like, the little subtleties, like, how are we gonna find them? Like Scotty and those guys, how are we gonna find them? And they're walking right past a Yellow Pages billboard on the side of the building. So you're like, it's just stuff like that is just hilarious about this movie.
Captain, she's the Enterprise.
She's the Enterprise.
Yeah, it's
Understood.
great.
It's so great.
So
The bus scene with Spock and the
oh
punk
my
guy is so
god,
good. It's
would you turn that down?
Spock. I don't know. Everybody, yay! It's such a fun movie.
Captain, what did he mean by exact change?
Yeah, I don't know. And they go on the bus, get kicked right off. It's so good.
Captain, wasn't that a gift from Dr. McCoy? Well, see, that's the beauty of it.
It
It will
will be
still
again.
be.
Exactly.
So now the question is, well, unless we want to get real weird, maybe it's not, but I feel like we have the same
We do.
movies, but do we have them in the same order? So what's your
It's
number 2, Sandy?
so my number two is and could easily be my number one because this
Mm-hmm.
movie kicks ass so bad and deals a lot with my second favorite enemies of
Okay,
the
so your number
crew.
2 is my number 2.
My number two is
Choose
Star Trek First Contact.
Contact.
I love the Borg. I love that they
Same.
made the Borg from the TV show more menacing and ugly and
And they
lived in
advanced it. They
and
gave it the queen,
advanced.
and it was interesting. It was, yeah, this movie is so good.
It's so good. They go there. The Borg are attacking. The Starfleet says no, Captain Picard, because you could be a liability, and just because you're in the most powerful warship that we have, we're just going to let you patrol the neutral zone in case the Romulans decide to attack this. And he hears them in his head, and Deanna Troi knows it and stuff like that. So he makes the decision to break the rules. It's so good.
And if
They
he
go
didn't,
there.
everyone would be dead.
Everybody
And
would be dead.
that opening scene of him just having the nightmare of the
Oh,
Borg, and it's
poking into his eyeball. Oh,
it's
it's so
so strong, and it's you just understand so much of what has been. And again, that's something I liked was in Iborg.
yeah.
Picard was able to talk to the Borg, but he didn't look at him as a human. He looked at him as
Machine.
Locutus.
Yep.
He never distanced himself from that until this movie, and this movie is so one of the best Star Trek scores for sure.
Oh, so good.
It's
And
so it's this movie is beautiful, and
it's the whole cast. The whole cast has something to do.
Gets a
And
moment.
Data's arc is great. Riker down on the planet with Deanna, and how Deanna gets drunk with Zephyr Cochrane and listen to the bet loud. It's
we
so
don't have
funny.
time to talk
don't
about time.
That time and what Riker's like, you're drunk. You try to be talking to this guy. He wouldn't even talk to me if I didn't have a drink with him. And it's not synthahol. It's real liquor. They get hammered.
Yeah.
Alfre Woodard is awesome.
Oh.
She goes up to the Enterprise and she's literally the Jiminy Cricket to Captain Picard.
Yeah.
And that scene,
the best scene in the
best
whole
scene
movie.
in the whole movie when they're like
thousands of worlds and we retreat while
just
I am done backing away. The line
right.
must be drawn
Must be
here, this far, no farther.
That's right. And she's like, just blow up the ship. Get rid of these guys. Are you kidding me with this?
No.
Like, it's so simple. It's like, no. And he bashes the glass. And then she sees him and she calls him exactly what he's being at that point. She's like, okay, Ahab, looks like you broke your little
Ahab
ship.
has to go and get his whale.
Exactly.
And again, the thing I like this movie is there still is natural human funniness amongst dark moments. Is just he quotes Moby Dick, and he's like, Moby Dick. She's like, I never read it. And
Yeah, and
it's funny that she's able to reference it, but she's never read it. And yeah, this movie is so fantastic.
But Picard had read it, and he knew, and that's why it made it stop. And he was like, holy shit, I am doing that. I am wasting my entire crew. I'm wasting everybody. Let's just blow the ship up. Like, this is stupid.
But then he gets a heroic thing of, I have to go back for Data. I can't leave him. And one of the most beautiful moments, again, there's no talking, it's just visuals and the music of when the smoke's cleared and Picard goes down and the Borg Queen is still, and he just picks up her head and just snaps it. And that's, I'm rid of this. You're not going to affect me anymore.
And let's not forget the beautiful performance by Alice Krieg, who plays the Bored Queen. She's so maniacal
good.
and so logical and
so
manipulating and such a good. And she shows up again in another series
Voyager,
at the end. Voyager at the end. And she's so good at it.
So good.
It's
such a great movie. And
absolutely.
Our number one is Wrath of Khan.
Of course,
I know so many people is like, well, of course it's Wrath of Khan. Well, because it's a great movie. Wrath of Khan is a great Star Trek movie, and it is everything that is great about Star Trek. There is talk and there is action and there is great
sacrifice and emotion,
and there are character arcs within the movie, and it is a film that takes its main character and puts him in the darkest spot he's ever been, and when he comes out, he doesn't fully come out in the light because it is a character who was always used to that. Oh, I'm put in a dark spot, but I'm going to come out perfectly fine, and he comes out, and he's not. And he has to grasp that, and it is so powerful. It's a message that is rarely seen in movies like this. Most movies want to paint it as the no-win scenario. You know, I don't believe in the no-win scenario that, like, hey, no matter what happens, we're all going to be cool. We're all going to go and get beers after this. And it's like, no. Yep. Sometimes shit happens and you win while also losing.
You lose.
And
that's such a powerful message. So powerful. You're absolutely right. It's that no-win scenario is so prevalent throughout the entire thing. Saavik failing at the no-win scenario, and then them going, getting just stranded on the Genesis asteroid.
Well, the movie starts off with the Kobayashi Maru, and is a test that is supposed to. You're not supposed to beat it. It's supposed to be, how do you deal with a stressful situation like this as a commander? And then Kirk beat it. And it's like, well, that doesn't make sense. And then later in the film, you find out he cheated.
Yep.
And you go, and Savage's like, you cheated. And then this, and then it's a great scene where it's like, I don't believe in a no-win scenario, as he's getting them out of a no-win scenario until the very end of the movie, where he has to experience it. He has to finally experience the no-win scenario, and it's so beautiful.
And not to bring it back to Star Trek 2009, but I love that there was a comparison built like that. Like, Kirk did the exact same thing in 2009. He put a virus in the computer simulation in order to allow him to beat the situation. Mm-hmm. And instead of getting a commendation like he did in Wrath of Khan, he gets practically kicked out. He gets in trouble. So he's
the funny thing is, we don't know what happened to Kirk after he did that.
True.
All we know is the legend of Kirk is he's the only Starfleet cadet to ever beat the Kobayashi Maru. We don't know if he got court-martialed afterwards. All we know is he did it.
Well, no, he says right after that when Bone says he's the only person to ever beat the no-win scenario, and Saavik is like, what? And he's like, yeah, I manipulated the simulation so it would allow me to save the passengers, and then they stop, and so Saavik says, you cheated, and he's like, no, I had altered the whatever, and then he goes, and got a commendation for original thinking.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah. I that line has completely escaped me all these years. Look at that. Okay, never mind then.
So that's why those
what
two
if his
movies...
accommodation was house arrest?
That's right.
Because you know what? Actually, to be honest, you can take that in either way, because a character like Kirk could be like, yeah, I got accommodation for original thinking. They were like, you're on probation, motherfucker. But Kirk be like, hey, original thinking, all right.
Exactly.
That's the great thing about that character. But yeah, I mean, the end, you can't talk about this movie without talking about the end. That scene between Kirk and Spock. What do you think of my solution?
It's so moving to see two best friends not being able in the final moments of one of their lives to be able to be together. And I think it was so... Spock looked up, no matter what you want to think, Spock looked up to Jim and respected Kirk so much that this was his way of the no-win scenario, of beating the no-win scenario and saving his friends. And what he says is the needs of the many. And this has been, repeated a million times. Of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one. And he had like, so in his mind, in Spock's mind, this was the only choice to make. He was the only one strong enough because he's Vulcan to be able to go in there and do it. And he saves the ship, and it
And he
cost him his
knew he
life.
was going to die, you know,
Yep.
and it's so
And
powerful.
that's,
And then that one of my favorite film scenes of all
remember,
time will forever be Spock's funeral. That speech Kirk gives is so strong and is so
brutal.
amazing. The bagpipe music of Amazing Grace is so. And
Yeah.
then the conversation he has with David, you know, I'm proud to be your son. And then, how do you feel, Kirk? I feel young.
Young.
For a
Young.
character who began this movie talking about his midlife
How old he
crisis,
was.
saying, I feel young.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. There's
It's,
if you haven't seen this movie, stop listening to this and go and watch this movie, because no matter what me and Sandy say, the movie is 10 times better. We already talked about Ricardo Montalban being amazing.
yeah. He's just as amazing in this movie as he was in the in the TV show, and I absolutely do not take our word for stuff, guys. Take our list, go and watch these movies. Watch them in order. Just watch them in order, and you know it's.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say probably the exact same thing. If nothing else, watch Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It is such a good movie from start to finish. A lot of people talk about near perfect movies, and this is one of them for me.
It's number 6 on my list of all-time favorite films.
It is almost a perfect movie all the way through. Almost. And, I love it. I can watch this movie 100 times in a year and not be upset with it. So that's our list, buddy. I think it's
and what
good.
I was going to say was, if for nothing else, this episode, I hope, if you were someone who is a novice in Star Trek, I hope that we've shown you, you know, if you're someone who's, you know, a Star Wars fan and you've never really gotten into Star Trek, I hope you can see that there's so much good, and there's so much more than what we were even able to touch on. There's so many more good episodes. There's other good series that are out there. There's many more good characters we didn't get to talk about.
Yeah.
It's
really great.
Much to say, except for this was a ton of fun. I've split this into a 2-parter. So, Sandy, where can the good people find you online?
You can find me every week here with you Saturdays when we drop new episodes of Rhyme and Reason, once again, where we talk about things that you should like that you don't. You guys can catch me on Late Night with Take 3. We had an awesome 50th episode last night. It's already on YouTube. Go and check it out. It's awesome. We had the Beast, William Bibiani on. So awesome. And you can find me all over Full Metal Trivia, hosting, playing, and scheduling matches. If you want to play, come and play in our Full Metal Classics, and we'll see what we can do about getting into singles league. If you have a teammate that you want to play, come to me and see if we can get you into the team league too. So, and don't forget our Geek League. Our Geek League talks about Star Trek all the time. So do your boning up. Come to see me, or come and see Robert Parker, Renee Villarreal Jr., or Cody Newberry, who is also a member of Take 3. And you can find me on Twitter and Facebook at srobinson1799. That's it.
And you guys, as always, can find me at Kearns_Matthew on Twitter, MattLane6 on YouTube, and right here as co-host of Rhyme and Reason. This has been a ton of fun to do. Thank you guys so much, as always, for watching, and live long and prosper.